Welcome everybody to today's webinar about selling renewable electricity at auction. I'm your presenter. My name's Gaynor Hartnell. I used to be the Chief Executive of the Renewable Energy Association, and I'm going to actually tell you about and indeed show you how the ePOWER auction works. I'll be giving a PowerPoint presentation and during that I'll be dipping in and out of the auction whilst it's in progress and show you where to find things on the ePOWER website. I'll also tell you how you can become a member of the REA if you're not already, and during the course of this webinar you can ask any questions and Stuart Stevens will answer them when we go up to Newcastle to say hello to him. So what is ePOWER? ePOWER is an online auction for selling renewable electricity on short-term contract. Suppliers can bid their best prices for power purchase agreements, and these PPAs are either 6 or 12 months in duration. You as a generator can specify how long you want your PPA to last. This January auction is for power mostly to be generated from the 1st of April this year, and there is also another large auction in July which is mainly for generation from October 2016. There are also monthly mini auctions which are run on the same day as the eRock auction, and those have been going very well. There are the same number of suppliers participating and the process is just as competitive. So should you need to go to auction because your generation has started sometime between the 1st of April or October, you can join one of those monthly auctions when the eRock is taking place. So who can use ePOWER? Any renewable energy generator, renewable generator with electricity to sell can participate. So it could be, for example, a renewable obligation generator selling their power. They can sell that either with or without the accompanying ROCs. Ex-NOFO generators can use it. Indeed, any renewable generator not tied into a long-term PPA. Feed-in tariff generators can also choose to sell their export under contract instead of taking the administered export price, although having said that, at the moment with the export price not reflecting the removal of the levy exemption certificate, it actually may be a better option to stay with the administered price. So what is being auctioned today? So we have 85 generating sites participating. That's roughly split into 50-50 commercial contracts and NOFO contracts. Now, the NOFO generators, they are obliged to use the ePOWER auction to sell their output, whereas the commercial contracts, these are generators who have chosen this route to sell their power. And of those commercial contracts, there are 23 ex-NOFO projects and there are 16 renewable obligation certificate projects and 4 feed-in tariff generators. The ePOWER auction has its origins on a statutory basis. When NOFO projects moved from being contracted with the regional electricity company, this is quite a long time ago, and NETA came into effect, they had to sell their power a different route because the counterparty had effectively been made non-existent by changes to the wider electricity supply industry. These NOFO generators then started using the auction, and over time these NOFO contracts have come to an end, and so the number of NOFO generators using the ePOWER auction has fallen as those NOFO contracts finish, whereas the number of commercial contracts is increasing. In terms of what's being auctioned today, of those projects mentioned, in terms of megawatts capacity, we've got 74 megawatts of landfill gas, 23 megawatts of hydro, 3 of AD, etc., etc., 164 on wind. Breaking it down by project numbers, there are 29 landfill gas sites, 29 wind farms, etc. So let's move over and actually take a look at the auction itself. So here we are. We can see here the sites. You can sort them in various different ways. I'm sorting them by NOFO or commercial contracts. And you can see them listed here, anonymised. And this is my own viewing window to take you through this webinar. So the project names are not visible, but you can see the technology, the GSP group, etc. You can also see information about projects. I'll scroll down and show you, for example, some of the landfill gas projects. Most of these are being auctioned for 6 months, as you see, from the 1st of April to the 30th of September. There are some who are have chosen to go to auction for a whole year, and wherever there is a difference, that is highlighted in red. I'll see if I can sort and take you to a project which is not quite the same as the others in terms of contract duration. I'll sort the project by reference number. So in terms of these landfill gas projects, this one, I'm aware, is going for a different time period. This particular generator has felt that it's best to go to auction for his output during the winter months to sell that now rather than later. This particular generator believes that power prices might move down further still, and so he'd like to go to auction today. So his contract term is shown in red to alert suppliers who are bidding on that project that this is different. So that shows you the projects in the auction today, and I will come back later and show you how the bidding process works. So to go back to the presentation, we've just taken a look at what's for sale, and now I'm going to talk to you about who's buying that power. We've got 20 licensed electricity suppliers taking part today, and licensed electricity suppliers really like the ePOWER auction because there are low transaction and administration costs. They can deal with one party, ePOWER, rather than a host of small renewable generators. Administratively, this is very convenient. They get one invoice for their entire portfolio of projects they purchase through the auction. They get to use a contract they're familiar with. Many of them have been using this contract for many years. They know where to find all the information they need. I'll show you that in a moment. And for new suppliers entering the supply market, this is a very good way of actually getting a portfolio of renewable generation to start off. It's competitive, on the other hand. In the summer auction last year, there were an average of 11 bids per project across all suppliers, and prior to that, in the winter auction 2014-15, there was an average of 13 bids per project. Now, the information available to suppliers in advance of the auction, I've got a part of a screen grab here. There are actually 40 columns of different data sets, everything a supplier could wish to know: the MPAN number, the triad benefit sharing arrangements, etc., etc. There is also absolutely comprehensive data about the output of the project every half hour for 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, is on a very large spreadsheet, and they can reference that. And they also have that information, the performance of the generator, in graphic form, as you can see here. Furthermore, if there is anything unexpected about the performance of that generator, they also get information about why that should have been. For example, with this hydro project, there was a burst pipe in July 2015. The problem was resolved in September, and they can see exactly what the issue was. And here's another example. In this particular case, this is an energy from waste project, I believe. There was a maintenance issue and there was reduced load. On the other hand, the supplier was advised of that in advance, and so the supplier was happy. as a generator, you can help yourself by making sure you keep your supplier happy and informed if you know of any issues that are coming along. So let's go back to the auction site, and I'll explain how the auction actually happens. This is not like eBay, where you know when the auction is going to finish, and the bidding generally hots up just in those final moments before the hammer comes down. In this auction, it's the opposite. Basically, there's a 2-hour bidding window where suppliers can put a bid in for a project. If they're not outbid within 2 hours, the hammer comes down and that project is sold. Now, auctions start at 9 o'clock and they finish at 5. So, for example, if a bid comes in at 1 minute to 5, say you're the supplier that's just been outbid, you can go to sleep on it and consider whether you want to bid a bit more in the morning. And so in the morning, 9 o'clock, the following day, you have 1 hour and 59 minutes to actually put in a higher bid and win that project back again. So let's scroll down here. We can sort the projects by expiry time. So we see here, first of all, we see these projects which haven't had a bid at all. So far, these projects have not met their reserve price. Each generator can specify their own reserve price, although ePOWER does advise all generators on what reserve price they recommend. These generators may have gone and suggested a higher reserve price, and that's in the generator's gift to do. So these projects here are still for sale, and this has got virtually 2 hours to run, as has this one. But if we scroll down, we can see time elapsing. Let's go down here. Now, this particular project, this wind project, SRO project, the hammer is just about to come down, and if there is not another bid within the next 27 seconds, that project will be sold. So things to note. As a generator, the hassle of the whole negotiation process is taken away for you with the ePOWER auction. You can be assured of getting the best price on the day. You can enter the process at fairly short notice, although you're advised to get your project in good time, because the suppliers will have had 3 to 4 weeks before this auction starts to look at the projects that are up for sale and to actually decide their bidding strategy, etc. You can set your time period, you can set the date when you want your contract to start, you can set the duration, either 6 or 12 months. You can even set your own project-specific reserve price. ePOWER will advise you on what reserve price to go for. Each reserve price is tailored to the project, because you've got things like GGOS to consider, etc., etc. But if you don't like the price, the reserve price that ePOWER has suggested to you, you can go for a higher one. You can choose the month you go to auction, but not the particular day. For example, if you do need to go to an auction between the January auction and the July auction, you can join in the small mini auction that runs alongside when they're selling rocks only. And as I said earlier, there's no diminution of the prices observed there or the competitiveness upon which those projects are bid for. You can watch your progress through a viewing window, your own viewing window, which just shows your project. And I mentioned earlier that only suppliers can only see the contracts that they're able to bid for. The fee for using the ePOWER auction is £1 per megawatt hour. And for renewable obligation projects, that's subject to a minimum of £200 a month, and for FIT projects, £50 a month. But that is very favourable when you compare it with other PPAs, which typically cost £2 a megawatt hour administration charge. So it's not hard to see why it's so popular from the generator's point of view, because it isn't easy getting the best PPA. You've got 3 options really. You can either use the ePOWER auction, you can do the negotiations yourself and get bids from different suppliers and compare them across each other. You have to be wary because you're often not comparing like with like when you do that. Or the third option is to actually go to an agent who can advise you through that process, and of course you have to pay for that. You get near to the full market value with the ePOWER auction, and I'll show you some statistics in a moment. And the contract is very beneficial to generators because of the legacy of how the ePOWER auction came about. I actually was involved in the negotiation of the NOFO contracts when they had to move to an auction basis, and you know, because there were a large number of small generators, we generally got a very good deal on issues such as triad trading, GGOS sharing, etc., etc. So that legacy has helped ensure that these contracts really are good from a generator's point of view. The contract covers all of the export power and the embedded benefits. There are extremely good cash flow benefits arising to a generator from this. So for example, let's take January. So January, this January, this month of generation, the half-hourly data will come from suppliers to ePOWER by the 5th of February. And then by the 10th of February, ePOWER will actually put together for you as a generator your statement showing what you should invoice to ePOWER, and of course taking the agency fee off that. So that happens a few days later, and then you as a generator get your invoice in to ePOWER by the 23rd of February, and you get paid on the 29th of February. So you have been paid in the month, at the end of the month following generation, which is very good. And don't forget, that is your entire, the entire value stream from that project. Say, for example, if you're a ROC generator, by this time the ROCs wouldn't have even been issued yet, so you wouldn't have been paid for them. And then you may have to wait an 18-month period before you can actually get the final bit of payment, which will be the ROC recycling value. So you get paid for everything at the end of the month following generation, which is very good if you're, say, doing your cash flow. As long as you have an idea of what you're going to be generating, you can really accurately predict your cash. And it's great because it's before those ROCs have even been issued by Ofgem. So that's where to find the billing timetable here on the ePOWER website, down here under resources. We'll have another look at the website later because there's something else I want to show you. So I was mentioning cash flow benefits. It's a simple single price, and the bidder takes all of the offtake and all of the imbalance risk, which is good for you. All the billing and settlement needs are also taken care of. And I think this shows really what generators think of the ePOWER auction. When, as I mentioned earlier, those NOFO contracts had to move to an auction basis, the contracts moved over, and then when those NOFO generators' NOFO contracts expired, of those independent generators, i.e. not linked to a supply company, 85% of those actually chose to stay with ePOWER once their statutory NOFO contract had finished. They could have walked away and gone to the market, but they decided to stay. And of those 15% that did go off to market and tried other methods for selling their power, 90% of them then went back to the auction. Of course, there are NOFO generators whose contracts are expiring all the time, but this proportion of staying with ePOWER has held the same since NOFO contracts started to tail off. What's the maximum price that could be expected? This is a table extracted from a Cornwall Energy report of how the summer auction went. These are the wholesale baseload prices, the ROCs, the LECs, etc., the GGOS charges, etc. And these are the ones whose prices can vary depending on the location. In terms of the spread of results, you can see that half the generators got 95 to 100% of the value of the theoretical value of their power, and indeed some 20% got a very good price indeed, 100% to 105% of the theoretical value of their power. and 20% were, getting up to 95%. So those prices are good. They're typically certainly better than you'd get under a longer term contract, and good whatever way you look at it. Incidentally, this is a link, and you can find the Cornwall Energy reports of the auctions on the ePOWER website, and you can also click on them from this presentation afterwards. So actually looking down here now at how those prices spread out on a technology basis, you can see here that generally speaking, those projects that are base load or predictable do tend to command higher prices than those projects which are intermittent or perhaps more variable, which won't be a surprise to you, I'm sure. You can also help yourself by being a good generator and gaining a reputation for always keeping the supplier, whichever supplier it is, informed of how your generation is going and when you have to have operation and maintenance, for example. Just to highlight the solar projects here, that's rather an anomaly. This project will be fit export only, and this would be with ROCs. We see here one of the lowest prices and one of the highest prices. That's an anomaly. Solar projects only recently started to come into the auction, and so there won't have been that many projects sold in that particular auction there. ePOWER is very competitive. Round about 20 suppliers regularly take part. There were 22 in the last auction. There are 20 in this auction. On average, you see projects being bid on around 10 times per site, and there were 13 bids per site average in the last auction. And this squeezes out the best price. And it's a live dynamic process rather than a static tender process. Really, the legwork is taken out of it for you as a generator. But it's not only good for generators, the suppliers like it too. They're familiar with the auction format, they're familiar with the power purchase agreement. They really like to receive one single invoice for the entire portfolio of projects that they've purchased through the ePOWER auction. It's good to enter the market for the first time, but it's also a good way for suppliers to spread their risks. If they have a wide portfolio of smaller generators, this tends to have a better imbalance risk for them. So in the ePOWER auction, being a small generator, it turns it from possibly a hindrance into a virtue. To read Cornwall Energy's words, I won't read this word for word, but Cornwall Energy, the consultancy company, which I think is very well respected amongst independent generators and renewable generators in particular, they say here, and you can read this at your leisure, that it's a good way of getting a power purchase agreement. How to get started, where to find things on ePOWER website if you want to avail yourself of its services. What to do next? This has a link to where you can download the agency agreement. The agency agreement appoints ePOWER to act on your behalf to sell your power to the highest bidder. It's an evergreen contract, but it only commits you to sell in the upcoming auction. To get your site listed on the ePOWER for the first time, you fill out a very simple form. Actually, I might as well show you what that form looks like. One page of questions, which takes the basic information from your project. You do this once, and then thereafter, when you stay with the ePOWER auction, all of the half-hourly data and other information will be uploaded for you. You don't need to think about that again. I've already shown you the billing timetable, and so you get that from the resources section here. There are also frequently asked questions, jargon busters, etc., etc. So that's everything you need to know about the auction. You can follow ePOWER on Twitter. You can sign up for a regular newsletter which tells you everything you really need to know as a renewable generator. This has been put on, this webinar hosted by the Renewable Energy Association. If you're not a member of the Renewable Energy Association, you can easily rectify that, and you've got information on this slide about how to contact the membership team. The REA is a trade body, trade association. It represents all renewable sectors across power, heat, transport and renewable gas, and we cover energy storage as well. The Renewable Energy Association lobbies government, its departments, etc. And you can get one-to-one access of the knowledgeable individuals on the REA policy team to keep you updated with a very regular changing policy environment in which you work. So moving on, I hope you found this helpful. Stuart, we're going to go over live to Stuart now up in Newcastle, where the ePOWER's offices are.
Good afternoon. I can see one question that's come through, and that's actually from a from a FIT generator, 2.25 megawatt FIT generator of wind. Really the question, can he sell his power through the auction without his ROCs? Yes, of course. We have a number of FIT generators in our auction, 4 auctioning their power today, but 14 FIT generators across all the different technologies that currently sell their power in our auction. So you don't have to be just with ROCs. And at the size of 2.25 megawatts, that would be a decent size project to sell in the auction. And it's just, obviously, it's the export power that you are selling in our auction. But we can send more details to you on that, as we will actually be sending out this presentation, or we will be sending you a link to our website where you can actually watch this webinar, but we will answer any other individual questions that might come through. Now that's the only question that I've got on my screen. I'm not sure if we've got all the questions across from the webinar being run down in London, but if we have missed any, then of course we will come back to you on an individual basis. So I think safe to say from me, thanks ever so much for listening to the webinar, and I'd like to just hand back to Gaynor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Stuart. I think that's really it. We'll send everybody a link where they can view this webinar again, or tell their colleagues where they can find it. And I wish you well with the rest of the auction, Stuart.